Hey everybody, well, it's the Alex Garrett Podcast Network, and you know, July 2nd, 1776, Congress did something right. The Continental Congress approved of America's independence from Great Britain. In fact, I got to be in the room where it happened in Philadelphia, and I'll share that audio maybe on July the 4th itself, replay for those who've just joined the podcast journey. But it's such an interesting thing to me that I feel like it's one of the last things Congress has done to benefit America, which is making us free. Now, I was corrected that George Washington had not led the Continental Congress at this time, or he was part of the Army at the time, but he was in that room and with the Founding Fathers, and of course he became the first president. He was in there, and I got to see the chair he sat in as America was being formed. And so, on that note, I wrote an article called "The Last Thing, Congress Did Right" was July 2nd, 1776, and of course, July 4th, the ratification, the official signing of the Declaration. And why did I say that? Because in our own backyard, there are still families of one of the largest victims of the largest terrorist attacks ever, the largest terrorist attack ever on our soil, looking for justice. That's why 9/11 Justice was formed by Brett Eagleson, and today I had the opportunity to attend a press conference where they are making sure people don't forget that their loved ones were killed in 9/11. Take a listen.
Before I get started, my colleague Dennis is going to read a note from Congressman Mike Lawler, who couldn't be here today, but he did want to pass along some comments in his sentiments. So I'm just going to have Dennis read those notes, and then we'll get started.
Again, good morning. Thanks for being here. My name is Dennis McGinley, and our brother Danny was murdered on the 89th floor of the South Tower on 9/11. Like Brett said, I just want to read a quick statement of support from Congressman Mike Lawler, who is proudly serving New York's Hudson Valley. And it is addressed to Brett Eagleson, president of 9/11 Justice. Thank you, Brett Eagleson, for inviting me to join you for today's important announcement. My heart goes out to you and to all who lost loved ones in the September 11th attacks. I regret being unable to join you in person as I am in my district for events with constituents. But I wanted to make sure to provide a statement to be read for this important event. September 11th, 2001 changed our world. Like most Americans who are old enough, I'll never forget where I was that day. I was entering my 5th day of freshman year at Suffern High School. I'll never forget hearing the news of the attacks over the loudspeaker, or witnessing the fear of my fellow classmates who had parents who worked in the World Trade Center or served as first responders. Almost 23 years later, those memories and the aftermath are forever etched in our minds. September 11th had a profound impact on our nation, but particularly on New Yorkers. We lost thousands of innocent Americans on that day, and continue to lose more of the brave heroes who worked tirelessly on the pile, trying to find survivors and help other families find closure. We must never forget those we lost, nor fail to honor their memories. As a nation, it is an imperative that we never forget, and that our children and grandchildren understand the events of that day. That is why it is so important we continue to mark the occasion in communities across the country and recognize all those we lost. For that reason, I introduced legislation last year to ensure September 11th is always remembered by making it a federal holiday. I also introduced legislation to ensure 9/11 survivors and the families of those we lost receive the full compensation they are due. I am going to keep working with my colleagues in both parties to get the American Victims of Terror Compensation Act and September 11th Day of Remembrance Act passed and signed into law. We owe nothing less to these families. Justice for 9/11 families means we must ensure they receive the full compensation they are due for their losses and for their health care needs. But it also means getting them the answers that they and the American people deserve. The video filmed by Saudi intelligence agent Omar al-Bayoumi, only just made public, that appears to show him casing the Capitol at the same time that the 9/11 attacks were being planned out, is incredibly disturbing and raises new questions about the number of and extent to which Saudi officials were involved in the September 11th terrorist attacks. These questions must be answered. We owe it to Brett and to all those loved ones on September 11th that we lost, to the victims, the survivors, to those who continue to be diagnosed with health effects from that terrible day, and to all Americans. I will continue to speak out, to demand answers, and to ensure that every individual with ties to this horrific attack on our country is brought to justice. Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis. We echo the words from Congressman Lawler. You know, as we stand here today, surrounded by family members of those who died horrifically and tragically in the World Trade Center, the Pentagon, and the flight in Shanksville, Pennsylvania, we're no longer searching for words of, you're in our thoughts and prayers. We're no longer looking for to be coddled or comfort. We stand here pissed off. It's 23 years later, and our government has failed to bring us accountability, closure, and justice. Our government fails to talk tough on the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Every member of Congress, especially the two candidates running for the highest office in this land, the two candidates running for President of the United States, President Joe Biden and former President Donald Trump, need to be addressing this issue. There was a debate, if you want to call it a debate, less than a week ago, where these two candidates for president knew about the existence of this video, and neither one of them had the courage to stand with the 9/11 families and address this issue. Former President Trump campaigns on the fact that he puts America first. In 2016, he said live on Fox News, it wasn't Iraq that knocked down the towers. Somebody ought to open up the files. It was Saudi Arabia that knocked down the towers. In 2019, he invited myself and members of standing with me on this stage to the White House. He promised he was going to help. He said he was going to declassify the documents. He said we were right and just to pursue our actions against the kingdom. Keep going, he said. I am with you, he said. The next day, his Attorney General, Bill Barr, invoked the state secrets principle, keeping all of these documents under lock and key. President Joe Biden campaigned on the promise that he was going to make Saudi Arabia a pariah state. He wrote a letter to our families and our attorneys saying if he were elected president, he would declassify the documents. It wasn't until pressure from these family members on the 20th anniversary of 9/11 when we threatened to protest his appearance at Ground Zero that he enacted Presidential Executive Order 14040. But despite of the fact that he enacted that Presidential Executive Order, guess what? We did not get the video that CBS obtained. It was the families, and it was our dogged pursuit of justice. We were the ones that were able to obtain this video. We didn't get this video from the United States government. We got this video from the British government. You could argue that the families did a better job investigating the attacks of 9/11 than the United States government, with its hundreds of billions of dollars of resources. The former deputy director of the CIA went live on Face the Nation and said he's never seen this video. Listen, the time for games and doubts about whether Saudi Arabia did it is over. This is a bipartisan issue. You just heard from Congressman Mike Lawler, who's a Republican. Senator Blumenthal, on the left side, has been one of our biggest supporters. Senator Cornyn, Senator Grassley, Senator Gillibrand. There is no issue today in the United States politics that members of the left and right can agree on except this. And it's unconscionable that the two candidates for President of the United States are refusing to address this issue. They'd rather bury their heads in the sand than come out and stand with these 9/11 family members. It's been 23 years, and we're no longer looking for words of comfort. We're looking for justice, and we're looking for a champion who's going to put America first. We're sick of it. I won't say anything else before I start swearing, but I think Dennis had a couple comments.
Yeah, I just wanted to share my personal comments. Again, as Brett mentioned, the 9/11 community, with little help from our own Department of Justice, FBI, and government, was able to finally obtain smoking gun evidence of the Saudi government's direct involvement in 9/11. But now is the time for President Biden, former President Donald Trump, Congress, and the Senate to help us obtain justice, accountability, and closure from those who perpetrated the largest mass murder on American soil. In just the past week, President Biden stated that we are the United States of America. There is nothing we cannot achieve when we stand together. Then, the next day, he said, we are the United States of America. We bow to no one. Well, we've been bowing to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia for the past 23 years. We've allowed them to get away with murdering 3,000 innocent Americans, murdering our Navy servicemen in Pensacola, Florida, murdering and dismembering a Washington Post reporter, ruin our institution of professional golf, manipulate our economy and presidential elections. President Biden also, in his speech last evening, talked about the January 6th protesters. They were held accountable for their actions that day, but not the people and government that actually tried to blow up the Capitol and kill everyone in it. It's bizarre. It's mind-boggling. My family and I took a tour of the Capitol building just 2 weeks ago. You cannot replace that building, the history there, nor the lives that would have been lost. There's a beautiful plaque memorial in the Capitol building honoring the heroes of Flight 93. These heroes, our loved ones, the first responders that are still dying from 9/11 related illness, deserve more than plaques and memorials. They deserve justice, accountability, and closure. The innocent Americans who were murdered on that horrific day would have done anything to get out of those buildings in planes. We're calling on our president, former President Donald Trump, all of our leaders and representatives in Washington to stand together, do something, and finally end this cat and mouse game, this national nightmare that we've been living for the last 23 years. Bring it to an end. We've been through enough. Thank you.
My name is Peter Brady. I lost my father. I'm going to live in the South Tower. The newly released video, which shows Omar al-Bayoumi, a known Saudi intelligence operative, conducting surveillance of the last target for the 9/11 hijackers only months before the attacks, is a significant piece of evidence that clearly implicates Saudi intelligence was at the center of the network, preparing the hijackers for the 9/11 attacks. This and other evidence implicates Bayoumi and other high-ranking Saudi officials who were the front end of the support network for the hijackers. They provided financial and logistical support which was deliberate, sustained, and carefully coordinated. Attempts to downplay this video as a sightsee or home video, along with other evidence, undermines the seriousness of the U.S. government's 9/11 investigation. Miami was casing the U.S. Capitals, focusing on security, features, personnel, and strategic locations. This is typical of pre-operational surveillance. Ignoring these signs demonstrates fundamental misunderstanding of intelligence and surveillance tradecraft, and challenges the narrative that this was just an innocent act. We demand that Congress take immediate and decisive action in response to this video, honoring the debt owed to the 9/11 community for their selfless sacrifice, saving countless lives at the Capitol. We need to ensure that their heroism is never forgotten. And there's currently legislation installed in U.S. Congress that can help the 9/11 families, who have been fighting for justice for over 20 years. We urgently call for a review of the FBI's handling of the video and other critical evidence. The CIA's failure to inform the 9/11 Commission, the former CIA Director Morell, of the video's existence raises concerns about the failures on how our government conducted their investigation. For over 2 decades, we have fought hard for transparency, accountability, and justice, facing numerous legal challenges, and governmental as well. The victims' families have already endured so much pain and suffering, and it is essential that all avenues for the truth and accountability be pursued.
Yeah, I'd just like to point out one important fact that I forgot to mention is that in 2004, the 9/11 Commission came to its conclusion. Now, while they got a lot of things right, they failed to address the role that Saudi Arabia played. The 9/11 Commission concluded in 2004, this Operation Encore, the secret FBI investigation, didn't commence until 2006, and it went for over a decade. So Encore concluded over a dozen years after the conclusion of the 9/11 Commission. So as far as we're concerned, the 9/11 Commission didn't have all the relevant facts. They certainly didn't have this video that you see aired on CBS News. There's a longer segment that's going to be airing on 60 Minutes in the fall, which talks more about this information. But do any of the other family members want to say anything, a few words? So with that, I think we'll open it up. If anybody has questions, we're happy to answer those.
Why do you think, no matter who the president is, they're not investigating or being honest about what they know?
Sure. I mean, there's a lot of theories on that. One is that our government enjoys, on a state-to-state level, a really cozy relationship with the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. It's no secret that they stabilize world oil markets. It's no secret that they spend billions and billions of dollars in Washington on lobbyists. As we stand here right now, they are fighting us tooth and nail in Southern District of Federal Court. They have the most expensive and high-priced lawyers in the world. They spend upwards of $10 million, I've heard, a month on their lobbying efforts. So I think that in this case, unfortunately, greed has trumped all. But, it doesn't deter us because we have the spirit of our loved ones pushing us forward. We have something more powerful than they have. We have the truth. We have the truth in these documents right here. And eventually the truth always wins and the good always wins. So we're going to keep going and we're going to keep pushing.
You've all asked for Congress to take immediate and decisive action. What is that? What does that look like? What do you want?
I mean, there's a number of things Congress could do and should do. I commend Congressman Lawler for making a powerful statement. Senator Blumenthal has done similar statements. I would like to see more members of Congress be vocal about this issue. There is a law that is currently stalled. It's in the House Judiciary Committee right now. It's called EJVTA, Ensuring Justice Against Sponsors of Terrorism. It's been delayed through a markup session, reasons unknown. There's a number of things we could do. We could pass resolutions. We could threaten to put them on the state sponsor of terror list. We need just more toughness We're tough enough to be up here, 150 yards from the 9/11 memorial 23 years later. Our Congress members should be tough enough to take on the kingdom, take on the special interest. Tell the Saudi lobbyists to get the hell out of their office.
What would satisfy everyone standing up on the stage? Like, if Congressmen are more vocal, to what end? What is justice? What does that look like?
We need our government to be honest with us about what happened that day. We need the documents to come out, not full redactions, page on page. And we need the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia to take accountability. Look, we're not saying that we should go attack the kingdom. That's not what we're saying. The current leader of Saudi Arabia he was my age on 9/11. He had nothing to do with the 9/11 attacks, but his government did. And if members of our government were found guilty of mass murdering 3,000 people in Italy, for example, our government would surely be held accountable. So we want the kingdom to acknowledge its wrongdoing. If the kingdom wants to have normal relationships with the West, if they want to invest in our sports leagues, if they want to buy our weapons, if they want us to commit our troops to defend their soil, they can't do any of that unless they address the sins of their past and they come clean and they own up to it. And by the way, it shouldn't be me talking about this. It should be President Biden and President Trump should be the number one people talking about this, not me.
I have a statement.
Sure.
My name's Melissa Bullis. I lost my husband on 9/11. He was 34 years old, left behind 4 children. I just want to make this statement. This has nothing to do with money. Money will never compensate what we lost. I'd like to know why 4 planes in one day got hijacked and how this happened. Money will never replace my husband or anybody else that was lost that day.
Thank you guys for coming. We appreciate you being here. This is so important to highlight. So thank you.
That was the entire press conference which took place today at the downtown Marriott, and I was so honored that Gabriella Bucci, the press person and PR person for 9/11 Justice, had me there. We want more answers, and we demand them. And after the press conference, I caught up with those you heard speaking up there, Pete Brady, of course, Brett Eagleson, and Dennis McGinley. All right, I've been invited to cover this very important event, the 9/11 Justice. You know, I'm here with Brett Eagleson, the founder of 9/11 Justice. First of all, Brett, why did you create this beautiful organization for justice for the 9/11 families?
Yeah, I mean, we needed a way to be more formalized. Prior to the creation of this, we didn't have a name or brand. We didn't have a way to send out press releases or even really to raise money. So we created a 501c at the suggestion of some people that are familiar in this space, and we did it, and it's been very helpful. So we've been doing this for a long time. It's just that we officially registered as a 501c about 2 yees ago.
Congratulations, by the way. Now, you're very passionate. So my first question is, you want to bring justice even more. Why not run for office? Has that crossed your mind?
People have asked me that question. I want to remain
independent.
Sane,
exactly.
Remain independent and be a family man. I think we could accomplish more with me not having to put a label on our group or myself.
I'm afraid that we haven't learned the lesson 23 years ago because we're still letting illegals and everything and terrorists into the country. Does that bother you as well?
Well, what bothers me is what I hear on the news every day. FBI Director Christopher Wray, who, by the way, he's been part of the blockage for some of these documents. But you hear what some of these leaders in Washington are saying, and the lights are flashing red again. So what's really, really concerning to me is, are we doing enough to prevent another terror attack?
You mentioned you were in President Trump's office in 2019. It sounds like, though, he's really disappointed you. Tell us why.
Well, President Trump campaigned on the fact that Saudi Arabia did 9/11. We thought that, he would come to our aid, and he did. He invited us to the Blue Room of the White House, and, he said he was going to declassify the documents, and his Attorney General, I can't honestly tell you why. There's theories, right? There's theories that people told him, hey, you know what? Bill Barr knows better than you. You better listen to Bill Barr. But it was Bill Barr that suggested and ultimately sign the state secrets doctrine, but they did that with President Trump's approval.
And then on the Biden side, of course, Afghanistan really ripped the wound, the scab open. I feel
Yeah,
like.
I mean, on the Biden side, again, there's equal, both individuals are equally guilty here for not doing enough to help the 9/11 families. With Biden, he campaigned on the fact that he was going to make Saudi Arabia a pariah state. He wrote a letter to the family saying he was going to declassify. He then goes and does, in fact, declassify under pressure from us, but then does nothing with the actual documents. So we have the documents here that I'm holding, and it's very clear that the kingdom was very much involved, or elements with the kingdom at least. So how come his administration hasn't done anything?
Tell us about the influence you've had. It sounds like you've gotten the ear of congresspeople, senators, and yes, presidents. So tell us what that means to have that influence, but it feels like you want to take it a little further now. You want to get further out there.
Yeah, we are going to keep doing this, and we're not going to stop until we have accountability, until we have the United States government stand with us, and whether that be a presidential candidate, a sitting member, or a sitting president, we want closure. We're tired of doing this. In a few weeks, we're going to mark the 23rd anniversary of 9/11. I don't want to have to be coming up here for the next 5-10 years. I want to move on with my life. I have a family of my own. And we just want to end this. I've heard Dennis call it a national nightmare. I think that's a great way to characterize it. We've been living this nightmare.
It impacted 3,000 and so many more, yet only a few Americans in this building. I mean, I'm sure you guys promote this event, so how can we, at the podcast side, get the word out for you guys?
Just keep talking about it. We had about 50 family members here today. We had about 5 or 6 news cameras, but I feel like there should be more. The CBS News segment got 4 million views on Twitter, or X rather. But then it just sort of didn't go anywhere from there. So we need members of the media to keep recirculating this and make this issue viral, make this a campaign issue, make this central to the next presidency.
And obviously, you talk about the video. Tell us really quick about this video, and can people view it?
Yes, people can view it. It's on Twitter. It's online. It's in different mediums. We have it. We have copies of it. We can post it to our website, which is 911justice.org, by the way. But the video is really conclusive. It's shocking. It's kind of bone-chilling. It's them casing the United States Capitol, and it's not just anybody that's doing it. It's an FBI-confirmed Saudi intelligence operative. So, that's one thing. But number 2 is that he's also in a video hosting the hijackers at his apartment. So, to us, it's very, very clear that elements within the Saudi government were behind this. Bayoumi wasn't doing this on his own. He was being tasked by higher Saudi government officials to go out and do this stuff.
I'm so glad that you created this, because I feel like as we get further and further away from it, people are starting to forget, and yet you're here saying, let's remember. So tell us about that aspect as well.
Well, one of the things that drives me is I want the truth. I want to get to the truth, and I want the truth to be told in public schools. Right now we're set to believe that it was 19 hijackers with no knowledge of English, no money, no idea of how to fly a plane, no knowledge of Western culture, were somehow able to band together and pull off the most consequential attack in this nation's history with no help from anybody. And what we're finding is, the truth is that they had a lot of help. They needed a lot of help to do it, and that help came in the form of the Saudi intelligence, or the Saudi support network, rather.
I want to thank you for also putting on this date. I don't know if you're aware, but July 2nd, 1776, Congress voted to make this a free country, and now here you are saying, let's keep it free and let's get answers.
That's just a random coincidence, but I love it. I love the coincidence in that.
Yeah, very much so. Well, Brett, thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for doing this.
Well, you might have heard in the press conference I just aired on my podcast, Peter Brady speak up about the loss of her dad and 9/11, the attacks. Tell us what it means to be here today, and really 9/11 justice, how it's helped your family pretty much heal and try to heal from all of that.
I think it's given a voice to a lot of people that are seeing this once a year. Family members that want to get involved are able to reach out to Brett and start to try and move the dial. A lot of what's been pushed out in the media is coming from 9/11 Justice and other organizations within the 9/11 community. But I think it's important that we still come together as a community. We're all going to always be part of this and continue to try and make the best of a bad situation.
Nationally, we all see the families on 9/11 when they do the readings. What is your message to Americans that only see that once a year to just get more involved, right?
Yes, I would agree with that statement. This is something that affects everything from national security to foreign politics, and it's just a bigger issue
that changed the world. Everybody plays a role in that.
And one last thing, have you reached out to Congress in your district and to further this cause? Or?
Yes, we continue to be in touch with our local and state and federal representatives to try and make our position heard and known.
Pete, thank you so much, and God bless you.
Thanks, sir.
And now here's the voice of Dennis McGinley, who spoke about losing his older brother, Danny, in the attacks of 9/11. Well, people just heard the press conference on my podcast. I just posted the whole thing. But tell us, here on the network, your relationship with Mike Lawler and how he was able to help out today, because that's a huge statement you delivered.
Actually, I'm not a constituent of Mike Lawler. I'm actually a constituent of Anthony D'Esposito, who's also
in Lyle.
He's also one of our champions and is very supportive. But I actually had the opportunity to meet Mike Lawler a couple times this year, once in his office with a fellow 9/11 family member, Jay Winnick. Jay is actually a constituent of Mike Lawler, but he was gracious enough to meet with us in his office. And then I ran into him actually down in Washington, D.C. about a month ago when we were doing a press conference for Fund the Fund, the Victims for State Sponsorship of Terror. So, but he couldn't be here. He would have, but we were very appreciative of him, giving us a statement.
Now tell us how you were affected by 9/11. Who did you lose in that attack?
I lost our oldest brother, so I'm one of 5 boys, very close-knit family. Danny, my brother, he was the oldest brother. At the time, he was 40 years old, married with 5 young children, and he worked on the 89th floor of the South Tower.
You wouldn't be here if you weren't as pissed off as everybody else. So how can we get more Americans pissed off about all of this?
I think it's just maybe, listen, I get it. It's been 20 plus years and people have, especially people outside of New York weren't really affected by it. But I think as Americans, this is the largest mass murder of Americans on our soil, the largest attack. I mean, this should be something that, kind of affects all Americans. And once they see this video evidence, smoking gun evidence that we had to obtain from another government, not ours, right? Like that, all Americans should be up in arms.
I would say so because it's women. We're paying their tax, paying tax.
I mean, look, we have millions of illegal aliens crossing the border that are unvetted. This could happen again.
Let me ask you this, because I'm always talking about being on the ground in the community. I feel like this is such a big example of being in the community with one another. How important is that to keep communities strong like this? To rise up, if you will.
Yeah, well, look, I mean, it's like President Biden kind of said the other day, as Americans, there's nothing we can't achieve if we stick together. So, standing together as a community is very powerful, right?
Yes, absolutely.
I mean, look what's in the history of our country, what small groups, small communities have been able to accomplish. So,
I asked Pete this. I'm going to ask you as well. Americans outside of New York only see, the families every year on the 9/11 national broadcast. Yeah. What's it mean to you, and how would you encourage Americans to get involved beyond just September 11th, the day itself?
What Congressman Lawler is looking to pass is that making 9/11 a federal holiday of remembrance. So obviously, we wouldn't want that to turn into like a Memorial Day, people having barbecues and going to the beach.
Right. No, that's right.
But teaching it more in schools, make it mandatory, that students, young children, learn like the real story behind that 9/11. Jay Winnick, who I mentioned as well, he's this constituent of Congressman Mike Lawler. He's actually the founder of 9/11 Day of Service, which is huge now, right? I think it's like Brett had said, it's a bipartisan issue, 9/11, right? Everybody should be rallying together to make this right. Like President Biden said, we're the greatest country in the world. How do we allow this to go unchecked, unaccounted for?
And how do they not have the video and all the declassified versus classified stuff? It's mind-boggling.
They've known about this, and they've fought it. Not only we're fighting our own government and our Department of Justice and FBI, we're fighting the Saudis too. It should not be like that.
Okay, you mentioned Liv, and I've been wanting to ask this all day, but I'll ask you. Phil Mickelson, the great American golfer, goes to Liv. Did you lose all respect for him, or what?
All respect. I mean, I lost respect for all of them, actually, especially for Bryce and DeChambeau.
Yeah, that's...
To say, come on, 9/11 family members. No one's perfect. But, can't we just move on
and forgive. Well, yeah, well, listen, we're all about forgiveness, but you have to ask for forgiveness first. You have to acknowledge what you did wrong to be forgiven. We're not against them playing golf and doing deals with American and being an ally, but like Brett had said, like, they got to address this before we can move forward.
Have you studied the 28 pages? I have to ask that because that's a big part of this commission, the 28 pages. I keep thinking about that when I think of Saudi Arabia. I'm sure that weighs in your mind as well.
Honestly, I haven't really seen the 28 pages, but I've seen everything else. I've seen Operation Encore. I've seen the evidence that has been declassified, and I've just seen this video evidence that the Saudis and our government has not existed. Well, we got it. We got it from the UK and from Scotland Yard. So,
unbelievable.
This has to stop. This game of cover-up and protection for the
How many trips to Washington have you made in these efforts to get more information?
I probably made about 3.
Wow. And I'm sure you're going to make more in the future here. So.
Hopefully. You know what? I'm hoping we don't have to. I'm hoping this comes to an end.
Well, God bless you, sir, on this endeavor.
Thank you very much.
So, that right there, 3 men who have been shattered by 9/11. And this week, the week we honor our independence, the week we honor the fact that Congress in 1776 said yes to independence. I urge today's Congress to follow the lead of Congressman Mike Lawler and those of Brett Eagleson and Pete Brady and Dennis McGinley to find justice for all the families of the victims of 9/11. 911justice.org. If you're a congressman or woman listening to this, visit it. This should not be a, issue of debate. There's no debate here. We need to help find these families some closure and some healing 23 years later, and also find out what other videos exist before 9/11. It's insane that the UK government, not our own government, had to help these families out. United States of America, we could do better. And we can especially do better for those families of the 9/11 tragedy. I'm Alex Garrett, and this has been a special presentation on the Alex Garrett Podcast Network.